Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Pac-12 Championship matchup between the USC Trojans and the Utah Utes. Both teams have had outstanding seasons getting to this point. You got USC, who is currently ranked number 4 in the college football playoff rankings, and for the Trojans, if you win this game, you're in the college football playoff, but in order to get there, you have to beat the one team that you lost to this season, and that is Utah. The Utes have been one of the top teams in the Pac-12 all season, one of the favorites to win the conference in the preseason. And here Utah is once again in the Pac-12 title game. They're 9-3, so their college football playoff hopes are gone, but they still have a chance to pull off one more big win of the season, and that's in the Pac-12 Championship game against USC. We'll be over a full game preview and prediction on this match here today, starting out with your team trends. USC beat Notre Dame 38-27 was the final score there. So they beat Notre Dame, who's really played well down the stretch. They've improved a ton over the course of the season, and they're ranked number 15 in the country, and that's obviously a resume-building win. And for USC, after they lost to Utah back in October, it seemed as if the Trojans were out of the college football playoff picture, because for most occasions, if you're a Pac-12 team or even an ACC team at this current point, if you take one loss, you're pretty much out of the college football playoff, just because your conference usually isn't that strong, especially in comparison to, say, the SEC or the Big Ten. So after that loss, USC's hopes, it seemed, were gone for the college football playoff, but it's just been such an insane college football season, especially in the past month, and that's given USC a chance to be in the college football playoff. And once again, I mean, it's as simple as you win this game, you're in the college football playoff if you're the Trojans here, and it's just a matter of if you're the 3 seed or the 4 seed. We'll see what happens there. So for the Trojans, they're 11-1. They're 8-1 in conference. Once again, their one loss is to Utah. And the Utes, they beat Colorado 63-21, took care of the Buffaloes there on the road to finish out the regular season. They're 9-3 on the year, and they've taken a couple of close losses. They lost to Oregon back on November 19th by 3. That was on the road in Eugene. They also lost to Florida way back in week 1, if you remember that. That was when Utah was ranked pretty high in the preseason, and that just seemed like a trap game going to Gainesville in week 1. Just wasn't a good matchup to have in week 1. And they also lost to UCLA back in the early parts of October, 42-32. So this team has taken 3 losses. Once again, that puts them easily out of the college football playoff picture. But, I mean, you win this game and you're Utah, that puts you in the Rose Bowl. So, I mean, that's a great opportunity for the Utes here, is you potentially got a Rose Bowl on the line here. And even if Utah does lose this game, there's still a chance to get put in the Rose Bowl. But, I mean, when you're a 9-4 team and you also got Washington in the conference, who's 10-2, there's a chance that the Huskies get put in the Rose Bowl over Utah in the case that the Utes do lose. There's some implications there. But nonetheless, both teams have had great seasons, no doubt. If you look at Utah's college football playoff ranking, they're number 11. Games will be on Friday, December 2nd in Las Vegas, Nevada. And your kickoff is 5 p.m. Pacific time. And this is pretty much the most significant game of the entire weekend, because, I mean, most of the drama, it seems as if, is over at this point in the season. It's just a matter of what the seeds are going to be. I mean, Michigan and Georgia are both locks for the college football playoff at this point. TCU, you could say, is a lock, just because their strength of schedule is strong enough. And so that leaves basically either USC or Ohio State to get that number 4 position. And, I mean, that's why this game is such a significant one. I can guarantee Ohio State fans are going to be watching this game, and they're going to be rooting hard for Utah, that's for sure, because Utah wins this game. That gives Ohio State more than likely a shot in the college football playoffs. So, I mean, this is a game that kind of involves more than 2 teams. It definitely involves 3. Ohio State is definitely in this mix as well. Spread's going USC by 2.5, over under 67. FPI is going Utah 61.2%. So you do have a disagreeing spread in FPI here, which is pretty rare. Series history, USC leads at 13-8. Utah's won 2 straight and 3 out of the past 5. So Utah does lead in recent history. They've won 2 straight, even though USC does lead the overall series. Stat comparison for this one, USC is a very strong team on offense. They're 3rd in the country in points per game. That is something to keep in mind. You got a very high-powered offense here. So they're 7th in pass yards a game. That puts them definitely as one of the top teams in the country in passing. And then their main weakness is in the passing defense, as they're 104th in pass yards allowed, and allowing an average of 262 pass yards a game, which is pretty terrible. But the rush defense hasn't been terrible, being 48th in rush yards allowed. Once again, that's kind of been the thing for USC. This team, they brought in a ton of strong offensive players from the transfer portal, but defensively, this team is pretty similar to how they were last season. This team was a poor team on defense, and honestly, all around last season, this team was just not very good. They were 4-8. They missed a bowl game by 2 games, one of the worst teams in the Pac-12, and you can tell. I mean, the transfer portal totally turned around this team in this past offseason, and obviously bringing in an outstanding coach, landing an outstanding coach in Lincoln Riley. But as for Utah, this team is solid on both sides of the ball. They're 14th in points per game, 23rd in points allowed. They're 53rd in passers a game, 10th in rush yards. This team is strong in the rushing game. The top rusher is Tavian Thomas with right around 700 yards and 7 touchdowns on the season. And defensively, this team is especially strong in the rushing defense, only allowing an average of 111 rush yards a game. So you compare these two teams, USC's main weakness is in the passing defense. Utah is mainly a rushing offense, but they can still pass the ball with Cam Rising pretty well. And as for Utah, you could say the main weakness is in potentially the passing defense, even though it isn't terrible. And obviously your main strength of the USC is in the passing game, with Caleb Williams being 7th in the country in that area. Your recent matchups: USC beat Notre Dame 38-27, beat UCLA 48-45, also beat Colorado 55-17, beat Cal 41-35, and beat Arizona 45-37. So there you are. I mean, this defense, that does concern me. If you put USC in the college football playoff, which probably they're going to be put against Georgia, I would assume. I do think if Georgia and Michigan both win their games, it's not going to matter. Georgia's going to be number 1, Michigan's going to be number 2. And so for USC, I would assume the Trojans, if they win. I do have TCU losing this weekend to Kansas State. So we'll see if USC gets to play either Michigan or Georgia. But either way, you're going up against a really good offense with either Michigan or Georgia. And so it just depends on, and I mean, this defense allowing 37 points to Arizona, 35 points to Cal, 45 to UCLA. I mean, I understand. I mean, UCLA is a good football team, but especially Cal and Arizona, 2 pretty poor teams, allowing that many points to them. That does concern me for USC and competing in the college football playoff. Offensively, I think they can do it, even though it's going to be tougher to score points, obviously, against your top 2 defenses in the country in Georgia and Michigan. But yeah, defensively, you're going to have to hold the offenses, and it's going to be a challenge because, I mean, USC hasn't really seen that many outstanding opponents this season, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So that's something to keep in mind. But for Utah, they beat Colorado 63-21, lost to Oregon by 3, beat up Stanford 42-7. They beat Arizona 45-20. Also beat Washington State 21-17. So this team has been solid down the stretch. Obviously, they have taken a couple of close losses, and that's why this team isn't a big college football playoff contender, but they're still, once again, very much in contention for the New Year's Six in this game. Key points: USC 11-1, win this game. Once again, USC is in the college football playoff. This is a team that is in a great position right now, being ranked 4th in the country, and it's really helped that a lot of chaos has happened down the stretch, because otherwise a one-loss Pac-12 champion probably wouldn't make the college football playoff, but here we are. Offensively, this team has got power. Defensively, they're poor at times once again, and Caleb Williams is a Heisman favorite. He's an outstanding football player, and I mean, there's a reason why heading into the season, USC's expectations became sky high when Caleb Williams was landed. I mean, the way that he played at Oklahoma, it totally makes sense that he's having as much success as he is with USC right now. And as for Utah, the Utes have had a roller coaster of a season once again, starting out the season 0-1 with the loss in Gainesville against Florida. And since then, this team's college football playoff hopes have been pretty down, and obviously taking 2 losses down the stretch to UCLA and to Oregon did diminish all of those hopes. But once again, with a win here, Utah is more than likely is potentially in the Rose Bowl. Once again, I mean, it's a whole deal. You got USC, who could still be in the Rose Bowl even if they do lose this game. Once again, we'll see what happens there. But Utah, if you win this game, you are in a New Year's Six bowl game, just a matter of which one. So Utah could get to a second straight Rose Bowl. And obviously, if USC wins this game and Utah does lose, it's either Washington or Utah in the Rose Bowl. So, I mean, the Pac-12 is still pretty complicated. All of my bowl projections coming out here tonight, so stay tuned for those, and I'll give you guys my thoughts. But as of right now, yeah, Utah is very much in contention for a New Year's Six bowl game, especially if they win this game. So that said, let's get to the prediction here for USC and Utah coming up here in the Pac-12 title game. potentially the most significant game coming up here in the conference championship weekend. And I'm going to go with USC to win this one, 42-34. USC lost to Utah in the regular season. That's the one loss that USC has. But as they always say, and as it usually goes in college football, it is very tough to beat the same team twice in a season. And for USC, that's their one loss of the season. I can guarantee you the Trojans are going to be coming into this game with a chip on their shoulder. There's a ton at stake. And for the Trojans, like, they learned from their mistakes in the previous game, which was in Salt Lake, by the way. And USC, they win this game 42-34. So I do think USC wins this one by a touchdown or so. I'll say 55% towards USC. Still could see Utah winning this game, but I do want to go with the Trojans here, over under 67. I'll take the over and USC to cover the spread in the end. Once again, this is a tough one to predict. You got two solid football teams. Utah beat them earlier in the season, but I do like the matchup with USC and their passing game going up against a Utah passing defense that has been vulnerable at times this season. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.